Netshirian.
Hello and welcome to the final episode of this mini series, Ransomware Deconstructed. We looked at what the profit motive was, the incredible margins. We looked at the kinds of ransomware, the types of attackers, the life cycle of a ransomware incident, what are the policies that are in play, what sort of roles you might need. But we're going to wrap this series up with an explanation of what constitutes an effective defense against ransomware these days. Well, first of all, it's worth mentioning that you need a layered defense, so called defense in depth. In the diagram, you can see the breach, and you need to think about pre breach activities, things like prediction, vulnerability management, threat intelligence, rigorous patching scheme. You can't throw your hands up and say it's going to be what it's going to be. You have to think about prevention. If you can prevent the ransomware from occurring, that was in fact the best thing that you can do. It'll cost you the least amount of money. So investing in proper endpoint protection, in threat hunting is sort of really key. Now, having done all of that, you have to have an assume breach paradigm. The reality is protecting every user at every endpoint all the time is practically impossible. And so then you have to assume that at some point the breach is going to get through. And if it does, which means all of your prevention defenses have somehow bit the dust, you weren't able to predict it, why then you need to think about detection and response as a necessary component of any kind of defense in ransomware. So regular vulnerability scanning, security awareness, training for staff. If you're still using that old-timey legacy antivirus, it's time to switch to modern EDR. Oh, by the way, have you maintained or paid attention to your offsite backup? Are you doing it rigorously? Have you, in fact, tested recovery from backup? Because at some point, if you have ransomware occurring successfully, even on one endpoint, you have to be able to recover that from backup. So we saw the life cycle of a ransomware incident, where a user browses to an evil website or receives a phishing email and is somehow lured into opening an attachment, and how that can lead to exploitation and installation, sending back information to command and control, or maybe the bad guys are brute forcing because you've exposed an RDP system to the public internet, or your credentials are available somehow on the dark web and you've shared username passwords, in which case they may attack you in the cloud, coming nowhere near your infrastructure. But if the privileged account has been compromised, sensitive data has been found, exfiltrated, and possibly encrypted, you've got ransom situation. So then you should be thinking in the upfront stages about protection via email, because it's such a popular mechanism for the mass infections. So have you invested in proper spam filtering, in a proper email protection system? Many of these are commercially available, and it's something to think about. How about identity protection? They're absolutely anxiously exploiting stolen credentials. As a very simple matter of fact, enable two-factor authentication, not just something you know, but something that you have. And this can go, in fact, a long way in blunting some of these ransomware attacks. And then given that we're all in the cloud, not just on-prem, have you invested sufficiently in cloud application security such that your cloud applications are properly secure? If you've put your Active Directory in the cloud, that you've got protection for it over there, that you're thinking about denial of service, that those kind of things. In other words, a layered defense is necessary. Now, when Netshirian can come into the picture, is the endpoint protection solution that's part of our XDR offering, is based on deep learning, and can catch, even zero-day attacks for which no signature has been developed. In fact, the whole point of deep learning is to provide you protection at the endpoint without ever having to have any updates for signature. So it's especially powerful, and it's something you should invest in because the endpoint is in fact the target for a lot of the ransomware attacks. And then the 24/7 SOC is part of the Netshirian managed XDR solution, leverages deep knowledge of all of the attacker tactics. And so you get right away a quantum jump in your capability for defense. And if you've thought about layering all of these, why then you're much better positioned for an effective defense against ransomware. But thank you for your attention. Hope you enjoyed this series. We'd love your feedback. Have a good day.
Nigerian.